his visitors to his own royal chamber, where he once more seated himself upon his ivory throne. "I have shown you," said he to Inga, "a part of my bodyguard. The royal armies, of which this is only a part, are as numerous as the sands of the ocean and live in many thousands of my underground caverns. You have come here thinking to force me to give up the captives of King Gos and Queen Kor, and I wanted to convince you that my power is too mighty for anyone to oppose. I am told that you are a wizard and depend upon magic to aid you, but you must know that the Nomes are not mortals and understand magic pretty well themselves. So if we are obliged to fight magic with magic, the chances are that we are 100 times more powerful than you can be. Think this over carefully, my boy, and try to realize that you are in my power. I do not believe you can force me to liberate King Kitticut and Queen Garee, and I know that you cannot coax me to do so, for I have given my promise to King Gos. Therefore, as I do not wish to hurt you, I ask you to go away peaceably and let me alone." "Forgive me if I do not agree with you, King Calico," answered the boy. "However difficult and dangerous my task may be, I cannot leave your dominions until every effort to release my parents has failed and left me completely discouraged." "Very well," said the king, evidently displeased. "I have warned you, and now if evil overtakes you, it is your own fault. I've a headache today, so I cannot entertain you properly according to your rank. But Click will attend you to my guest chambers, and tomorrow I will talk with you again." This seemed a fair and courteous way to treat one's declared enemies, so they politely expressed the wish that Calico's headache would be better, and followed their guide Click down a well-lighted passage and through several archways until they finally reached 3 nicely furnished bedchambers, which were cut from solid gray rock and well lighted and aired by some mysterious method known to the Nomes. The first of these rooms was given King Rinkitink, the second was Inga's, and the third was assigned to Bilbil the goat. There was a swinging rock door between the third and second rooms, and another between the second and first, which also had a door that opened upon the passage. Rinkitink's room was the largest, so it was here that an excellent dinner was spread by some of the Nome servants, who, in spite of their crooked shapes, proved to be well trained and competent. "You are not prisoners, you know," said Click. "Neither are you welcome guests, having declared your purpose to oppose our mighty king and all his hosts. But we bear you no ill will, and you are to be well fed and cared for as long as you remain in our caverns. Eat hearty, sleep tight, and pleasant dreams to you." Saying this, he left them alone, and at once Rinkitink and Inga began to counsel together as to the best means to liberate King Kitticut and Queen Garee. The White Pearl's advice was rather unsatisfactory to the boy just now, for all that the voice said in answer to his questions was, "Be patient, brave, and determined." Rinkitink suggested that they try to discover in what part of the series of underground caverns Inga's parents had been confined, as that knowledge was necessary before they could take any action. So together they started out, leaving Bilbil asleep in his room, and made their way unopposed through many corridors and caverns. In some places were great furnaces where gold dust was being melted into bricks. In other rooms, workmen were fashioning the gold into various articles and ornaments. In one cavern, immense wheels revolved which polished precious gems, and they found many caverns used as storerooms, where treasure of every kind was piled high. Also, they came to the barracks of the army and the great kitchens. There were Nomes everywhere, countless thousands of them, but none paid the slightest heed to the visitors from the earth's surface. Yet, although Inga and Rinkitink walked until they were weary, they were unable to locate the place where the boy's father and mother had been confined, and when they tried to return to their own rooms, they found that they had hopelessly lost themselves amid the labyrinth of passages. However, Click presently came to them, laughing at their discomfiture, and led them back to their bedchambers. Before they went to sleep, they carefully barred the door from Rinkitink's room to the corridor but the doors that connected the three rooms, one with another, were left wide open. In the night, Inga was awakened by a soft grating sound that filled him with anxiety because he could not account for it. It was dark in his room, the light having disappeared as soon as he got into bed, but he managed to feel his way to the door that led to Rinkitink's room and found it tightly closed and immovable. Then he made his way to the opposite door, leading to Bilbil's room, to discover that also had been closed and fastened. The boy had a curious sensation that all of his room, the walls, floor, and ceiling, was slowly whirling as if on a pivot, and it was such an uncomfortable feeling that he got into bed again, not knowing what else to do. And as the grating noise had ceased and the room now seemed stationary, he soon fell asleep again. When the boy wakened after many hours, he found the room again light. So he dressed himself and discovered that a small table containing a breakfast that was smoking hot had suddenly appeared in the center of his room. He tried the two doors, but finding that he could not open them, he ate some breakfast, thoughtfully wondering who had locked him in and why he had been made a prisoner. Then he again went to the door which he thought led to Rinkitink's chamber, and to his surprise the latch lifted easily and the door swung open. Before him was a rude corridor, hewn in the rock and dimly lighted. It did not look inviting, so Inga closed the door, puzzled to know what had become of Rinkitink's room and the king, and went to the opposite door. Opening this, he found a solid wall of rock confronting him, which effectually prevented his escape in that direction. The boy now realized that King Calico had tricked him, and while professing to receive him as a guest, had plotted to separate him from his comrades. One way had been left, however, by which he might escape, and he decided to see where it led to. So going to the first door, he opened it and ventured slowly into the dimly lighted corridor. When he had advanced a few steps, he heard the door of his room slam shut behind him. He ran back at once, but the door of rock fitted so closely into the wall that he found it impossible to open it again. That did not matter so much, however, for the room was a prison, and the only way of escape seemed ahead of him. Along the corridor he crept until, turning a corner, he found himself in a large domed cavern that was empty and deserted. Here also was a dim light that permitted him to see another corridor at the opposite side. So he crossed the rocky floor of the cavern and entered a second corridor. This one twisted and turned in every direction, but was not very long, so soon the boy reached a second cavern, not so large as the first. This he found vacant also, but it had another corridor leading out of it, so Inga entered that. It was straight and short, and beyond was a third cavern, which differed little from the others, except that it had a strong iron grating at one side of it. All three of these caverns had been roughly hewn from the rock, and it seemed they had never been put to use, as had all the other caverns of the gnomes he had visited. Standing in the third cavern, Inga saw what he thought was still another corridor at its farther side, so he walked toward it. This opening was dark, and the solemn silence all around him made him hesitate for a while to enter it. Upon reflection, however, he realized that unless he explored the place to the very end, he could not hope to escape from it. So he boldly entered the dark corridor and felt his way cautiously as he moved forward. Scarcely had he taken 2 paces when a crash resounded back of him, and a heavy sheet of steel closed the opening into the cavern from which he had just come. He paused a moment, but it still seemed best to proceed, and as Inga advanced in the dark, holding his hands outstretched before him to feel his way, handcuffs fell upon his wrists and locked themselves with a sharp click. And an instant later he found he was chained to a stout iron post set firmly in the rock floor. The chains were long enough to permit him to move a yard or so in any direction, and by feeling the walls he found he was in a small circular room that had no outlet except the passage by which he had entered, and that was now closed by the door of steel. This was the end of the series of caverns and corridors.